Hi, Laura. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Mhm. So, I only found your work really recently, and as I was saying, it just so beautiful. Like everything you post is so beautifully articulated and expressed and resonates with me so deeply. So, I was so happy when you said you had time to schedule an interview and we can get into these concepts because, yeah, I'm really yeah, really passionate about sharing this idea of divine feminine and why it's important to us at this time. Most of my work ends up being with women. I didn't plan it that way, but it's women that are drawn to my work. And I think it helps us so much at this time to really understand that divine feminine frequency and what it's all about. So I'd really love, first of all, if you would be happy to share, like, how did you come to this work in the first place? It's very specific what you're sharing.
Yes, so it was a long journey. So I started writing songs and poetry when I was around 12 years old. And so that was really when I started beginning to tap into the collective consciousness and to my own subconscious. I wasn't really sure what I was doing back then, but I had an idea. And I did focus on relationships for the most part with my music, but some of it was about, soul searching. Um, and then I got into the spiritual communities probably around like 19. I started going through an awakening process, and I also was in the entertainment industry around that time, and I left and I started studying child development. So that kind of layered on top of my um, exploration of spirituality. And then I brought back in the music for a little bit, and then that turned more into just writing. And I began to just really focus on the masculine and feminine because I found that that's what I was working to balance within myself this whole
Mm.
time. And I found that so many people were able to relate to that. They were going through the same.
Mm, that totally makes sense that you've come at it more from an artistic, creative perspective than as a coach or a life coach or anything like that, because it's so from the heart, your work, I feel.
Yes, yes. I always say, I really am I'm an artist. And then I started coaching because people asked me to. But really, I share from my heart. And that's what I've been doing since I was a little girl. And that's my intention.
So when you do the coaching, what kind of work do you do with people?
So I definitely tend to focus on relationships, but also purpose as well, because masculine and feminine energy, it is reflected back to us in our relationships. And as we work to bring those two together, what we then begin to birth is our authentic purpose. And so, I feel our purpose work really is just always what we're working on to bring that internal balance between our soul and our ego. And so it'll shift and it'll change. So a lot of times I'm coaching people with finding, you know, their a creative outlet, or again, like I said, people are also working on finding deeper relationships or healing relationships that they're already in, or and it's not just romantic, but sometimes it's struggling with family relationships and things like that. So again, the focus is relationship and purpose.
Mm. I'm really curious about as well is that we kind of when you find a like-minded, or I really love Marianne Hassner's work. I don't know if you know her, but she says like-hearted. When you find a like-hearted person, like there's a commonality of understanding that like you use terms like distorted feminine or wounded feminine as well as divine feminine. Like I'm really curious as to how we kind of arrive at the same understandings independently. How much do you feel that you're channeling and how much is coming from your personal experience and wisdom?
I really think that channeling is through our personal experience and wisdom, because we are the filter, so to speak, that is again like sort of mouthpiece for spirit, right? And so each of us has a unique and individual way of processing the information that's coming from source, but it's coming through, from this one central location. And then each of us has our different stories that we've lived. And I think that, there is ultimate truth, but that ultimate truth is going to look different depending on what your experiences are. And the more that we come into alignment with our soul, I think that we get to these ultimate truths, and then we find our soul family, and
Mm,
then we start using terminology that is similar, because it is something that's like encoded within that soul group. And so I do believe that a lot of people that follow me and resonate with my messages are part of my soul family.
beautiful. Thank you. So let's get into it then. How would you define divine feminine energy?
Yes. So I see the divine feminine as this, really, the portal to the spiritual realm. And so I see the divine feminine as holding that energy that allows us to access what we can't see with our eyes, but we know is true. And that's really how I define her. Now, of course, as she comes down and she is embodied in different people, there are other qualities that we see, like the nurturing and sensuality, and the open heartedness. But I see at like her highest um, embodiment, or the highest example of her, would be a portal.
Amazing, amazing. And one of the things I really am enjoying about your messages is something we'll get into more as we go along, but like you're saying, it's the purity of the expression, and you never in some of the stuff that's shared around this, they tend to get into putting the masculine in the kind of negative, and you never do that. You really hold space for the masculine as much as you're holding space for the feminine, which I appreciate so much. So what does divine masculine mean to you?
I definitely see divine masculine as the action, right? And so I see it as, especially because the divine masculine is in union with the divine feminine, because in order to achieve that title of divinity, I believe that there has to be that balance. And so the divine masculine is the ego in its highest expression. It's the
Mm,
ego, the achieved embodiment of the higher self. And so it's the way that we carry ourselves, it's the way that we engage with the world, it's our purpose, it's also the discernment, right? To really hold space for universal truth, universal law, and divine justice. That's how I see the divine
mm,
masculine.
mm. I see it as well as like it's inspired action, right? So it's taking action, but from that place that's in touch with the divine feminine. So it's yeah, it's inspired action.
Yes, yes, I love that. I tend to say that it's, when they come together, it's soul inspired action, because it's the divine feminine, which I see as the portal to the spiritual realm, and then the action of the ego
Mm,
coming together
mm.
and doing here on the planet, which is what we came here to do, is to shift things and evolve and create.
So can you tell us about that? Can you tell us about how you see it that we unify those aspects within ourselves? Because it begins within the individual, right? Before we start talking about the external manifestation of.
Yes. So I really, as we were saying before, that, I see myself as an artist. And so that's how I've always brought the two together, is through creation. So having an idea that is inspired from my soul, that is coming from the other realms, and then actually taking that idea and turning it into something, somehow, some way, to express and demonstrate here on the physical plane. That's what I truly see union as. And, there's also this component of the heart openness that has to be there as well. And so I see the divine masculine as a protector of that heart openness of the feminine.
Mm,
And so that means, setting boundaries. That means having complete clarity and discernment as to what is yours and what someone else's is, so that you know your frequency and your signature and you protect that. I see that as a union as well. So it's really kind of the two components. And that goes back to how I coach people, where we look at both relationships and purpose.
mm. And is that something that you've had to work at? Because I know for myself, I was raised very much to be doing, I'm in London, it's all about do, do, do. And I had to really put a lot of energy and awareness into cultivating my divine feminine and learning how to um, be in surrender a lot and come from that inspired place rather than my action coming from needing some kind of external validation. Is that a process that you had to go through yourself as well?
Yes, I tend to explain that oh, sorry, my chair is squeaking against the wall. Um, it's for me, I tend to be in my feminine more so than my masculine, and I always have been. So what I struggle with is action. And so I've always had the intention and the soul inspiration, but I've always struggled with the self-worth or the courage to actually take that and put it into action. And so in a way, I feel, like society in general is going towards going more within, and I'm almost backwards because
Mm,
go without, because I've
right,
really gotten to know the inner space very well.
right, right. So can you relate the work that you're doing to this time specifically? Like, why do you feel these archetypes are coming online for us now at this time?
I feel that we are definitely, evolving rapidly. And I feel that there is going to be this, major shift with the shifting, like solidifying the age of Aquarius, where we're going to see people coming into union with soul family. And then we're also going to see people creating new systems and structures. And that's with that divine masculine energy, but it's in union with the divine feminine. Whereas before, I feel that a lot of what we've created has been around superficial feminine energy. So there's been this focus on kind of like the lower aspects of the feminine, where it's like aesthetics and pleasure. And I feel that we're getting to this place now where we're going to be aligning with more of like spiritual truths. And so that's going to change the way that all of us operate, and all the systems that we create operate. They're almost being upgraded. And
Mm,
so that I feel it's so important right now for people to get in touch with that inner balance within themselves, because so many people are kind of hitting a wall with the old systems because they're dying.
mm,
And there's, people keep trying to go back to them and pump more energy into them, but it's just like there's nothing left.
mm,
So, in order to create something new, we have to be in touch with the divine feminine, because she is the light bearer, or the leader of evolution. And so that's why I think it's so important right now, with all of the breakdown of the old systems, that we have somewhere to go. And having somewhere to go means being in touch with our intuition.
right, right. And I feel like it's such a special time for us as for women like us. We have so much freedom, right? We have so much sovereignty, and that we can really choose how we want to live our lives in a way maybe our parents and our grandparents and our great grandparents didn't have this level of freedom. And what our generation are realizing is that we don't want to uphold the patriarchy. We want to create new systems that are more balanced and more fair, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I feel that, we've gone through this whole process of, there's a lot of us that are in our feminine energy that wanted to destroy the patriarchy. And so I understand that, and I understand where that comes from, because for so long the divine feminine has been like pushed out and she's on the outskirts. And so I feel that what's happening is there's this softening, And it's not, and when I say softening, it's not really a pleasant experience. It really is a breakdown of the ego that's happening, and it's softening those systems and structures that are that are developed from the patriarchy, and it's allowing the space for the feminine to finally come in. And so when we speak of the rise of the divine feminine, I feel that it's almost, it's like she's always been there. It's just that she's never really been included. And
Mm,
so I think we're finally starting to see that now.
mm. Well, so the essence of divine feminine is love, right? So we just learn over and over and over again. That's how you really heal things, is by holding a space of love, even when it feels really difficult. You just have to dig even deeper and find that compassion in your heart, right?
Absolutely. That open-heartedness that we can't really, we haven't been able to carry into the systems and structures because everything is so cold and mechanical and calculated. And so, a lot of people are reaching a breaking point where they can't operate like that.
Right,
And so now we're realizing how important it is to merge the head with the heart.
right, right. Could you speak on what you see as, I think you call it wounded feminine? Could you speak on what you see as that energy for us?
Yes. So wounded feminine energy, I definitely see that as it's a byproduct of what's happened, right? With the systems and the structures that are so rigid and so head based and logic based, that what happens is, the feminine gets pushed aside and discarded. And so that can cause a lot of wounds within our feminine energy, and especially if you're a core feminine, of feeling inadequate, feeling low self worth, wanting to people please, to be chosen and to be seen, and wanting external validation. And so I really see that, as the core of what the wounded feminine
Mm,
has, or the root issues in that wounded feminine archetype.
mm. Something I share a lot in my groups is I feel like, on the soul's journey, we will have all been tortured or at least alienated or even killed for being in our divine feminine energy. And that's why it's such a real wound, because no doubt in a past life you have experienced very real and um, traumatic results of being a seer, of being in that, like you articulated so well at the beginning, of being in that place where you're channeling from the unseen into the seen. So I feel like that is a big part of our work currently, is to recognize how real that wound is, and then to heal it within ourselves.
Yes, yes, I appreciate that so much, and the work that you're doing to allow people the space to process that, because we do carry so much from these past lives, and so many of us have been murdered, abused, put in situations where we could not speak our truth. So many people who carry that wounded feminine archetype will have a blocked throat chakra because of fear of, if we say the wrong thing, will be taken out
Mhm.
by the patriarchy. So it's there. And so such a big part of that is going back in to the emotional body and clearing out all of those trauma, like the trauma coding, you could say, that the wounded feminine carries.
Right. And how would you see the wounded masculine?
So I see definitely the wounded masculine as, the feeling of like not being able to protect the feminine,
Mhm.
and feeling that, the distorted masculine energy is running the show, and that why even try, why even try to set boundaries when I know I can't thrive if I go into that energy, because I have to be cold and in the head. So it's really this complacency, similar to the wounded feminine. There's a lack of self-worth, but also it presents more with the masculine energy's lack of courage, um, kind of just getting into this place of apathy and just accepting things as they are, and not feeling that you have the strength to to make a difference.
Mm, mm. So the whole concept of twin flame, I'd love to get into a bit with you. I think one of the first people I really started learning about the concept of it from was Jen McCarthy. If you know Jen McCarthy, she's written a book on twin flame. But like I was saying, it's so one of my big curiosities is how we can all be independently receiving really similar information, and even like really similar commonality of terms and languaging that we're using. It's obviously we're all connected somewhere.
Right.
Not sure exactly where that is, but somewhere there's we're reading the same books in the astral.
Absolutely.
Um, so yeah, it's something that I am having direct experience of, and I've interviewed Laura Fay on. She's, I think, beautifully expresses what those energies are about as well. But as it's become something that nobody talked about twin flame in 2019, and now it's like there's loads of stuff about it. But as always, this happens with these things. So much of what is the twin flame accounts, I feel, is really off key and really not connected to what I perceive as the energies, or what someone like Jen or Laura or yourself might perceive of the energies. So I'd love for you to explain why you don't refer to twin flame, and why you're kind of keeping away from that concept.
Yes, I used to a while ago. I think about 4 years ago, I would use twin flame a lot. And I would explain things through that journey. And then I began to see that, we tend to see things, or the ego tends to want to rush. And so we will assign labels to people that maybe it's not where we're at, actually. And that can get us into situations where we can be in abusive or toxic or repeating cycles where they're, narcissistic behaviors and then an empath attachment. And so I see a lot of twin flame teachings going in that direction, and using that, using limerence, right? Which is, the obsessive thoughts and
Mm,
feelings and not being able to focus off of another person, and using that as a way to make money or to get fame and
right,
power, because it's preying on a wound.
right.
And so I've decided, a couple years ago, that I wanted to stay away from those terms and get people to a place of self-empowerment,
Mm,
where then that they're able to control those two energies within themselves. We can't
mm,
control them. And yes, people come in and they are catalysts for us to develop that inner union. And yes, I
mm,
an outer union as well. I do believe that when we come to a place of inner union, we call in our soul family. And we often can even call in a romantic partnership that can be an example of the inner balance of the masculine and feminine within ourselves. But
mm,
it's all happening inside first. And so there's really no need to focus on the external journey as much as there's a need to focus inside, and then use the external journey as feedback to what's actually happening inside of you. And that's where you get the empowerment. And so I find that, when people focus on, what's happening with another person, they're giving their power away. And that's actually keeping us
mm,
full of wounded feminine.
That's beautifully put, because that's what I feel is like everything that happens is all perfect for me. There's none of
Yeah.
it that is. It's all a match. The good stuff and the bad, the stuff that I want and the stuff that I don't want. It's all a perfect match for me to evolve to my highest potential.
Yeah, it's, as they say, it's all for you, right? It's all working for you. And there really aren't mistakes. It's really just redirections from the universe. And so, we're constantly being realigned, and we're constantly being shown things that we don't want. so that we can understand better what we truly do want.
Right. And it's also the dismantling of the ego that you've been talking about. And I feel like this is a big part of the shift that we're being invited to make collectively, is to be able to trust our higher selves more, and just to work from that place where we're in connection, rather than the ego wanting to control things and, like you say, rush things and make things happen. It's totally an ego dismantling, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's why, when we get into the labels and we really attach to those and assign those, and we can get more into the ego space.
Right.
And, in order to progress on this soul journey, we have to go within. And so releasing the attachment to, these labels is important, I think.
Right, right. So can you talk about some of the common dynamics that you see happening between the masculine and the feminine, the external feminine, the external masculine? Like, what are some of the common things that people work through? Because that's one of the things I was saying to you before we went live. Just like all your messages just feel like they were perfectly written for me, and then I see that so many other people comment saying the same thing. So you seem to be able to really get to the heart of like how we navigate those that progress. So what are some of the common um challenges that you see people working through?
So, yeah, I'll just begin answering that by saying, so when I was 12 and I would write songs, I would find that the music that I wrote would always be in alignment with what was on the radio, with like pop music as far as the conflict between men and women. And so I was really aligned with that. And I didn't
Right,
understand well that that was the masculine and feminine. And so, I am seeing in general this desire for the masculine and feminine to come back into a place of union, but there's so much wounding on both sides and so much distortion that it's impossible to really do that until all the stuff on both sides are cleaned up. And so that's what I tend to see right now. I see a lot of poor feminines working on that wounded space, that place of feeling that they need to please or be chosen, and that kind of like pick me type of energy
right,
being cleared out. And then with the wounded masculine, I tend to see again, it's the lack of courage, lack of believing that you're capable of building and creating here on this planet, and that, let me just do things the way things people have always done them, and really kind of sticking to like broken ancestral patterns. The wounds of the father is what I tend to look at with masculine energy.
right,
And then we also have the distorted manifestations. So we have the distorted feminine who is almost kind of stepped up and become the masculine in a way, but it's still coming from a feminine space. So it looks more like emotional manipulation
right,
instead of logic. And so there's a lot of that where the feminine, in a way to defend herself, has created this kind of false masculinity that uses emotional manipulation, preys on people's like shame and all that type of wounding. And I tend to associate that with like the distorted mother figure. Um, and there's a lot of that. And so we're working on that. And that actually keeps the wounded feminine down, because I see that like the distorted mother reprimanding the wounded maiden. And so there's a lot of that dynamic, and people can oscillate between the two. They can carry both within themselves. Actually, we
right,
all carry both, but you
right,
can also then embody one or the other. So some women can really embody the distorted mother, while some women really embody the wounded maiden.
right, right. Yeah, that's one I see a lot, is because I've been studying Tantra a bit, like the Taoist tradition, and I was reading something, or I think it was a video I was watching, and they had a, I don't know if you're familiar with the work. It's kind of like Mantak Chia's work. It was that they had a picture of the male and the female, and they were saying that to get the, I think he calls it the microcosmic orbit, maybe that's something different, but like the energy flowing between the man and the woman, the man is the penetrating force below, and the women have to feel safe, but the woman is the penetrating force above. So we're penetrating from here, and he was saying that for a woman to love too much, that's what I see a lot, is we think, oh, you can't love too much, but to them it's as invasive and what's the word, as not attacking is the wrong word, but it's an invasive, as if they were trying to penetrate us down here. It's like they have to be ready to receive it, and if they're not ready to receive the love, it's they can't. It's not,
Wow.
it's not in balance.
Yeah, yeah, I love that imagery too, of the feminine penetrating from this space, right? And the
Yeah.
masculine coming up from, pretty much the lower chakras, right? And and that's so true. That's a big part of the feminine's healing process, is because when we start getting into that distorted feminine energy, um what can happen is that we can use emotions and the heart to be manipulative. And so we can think like, oh, you can't love someone too
Mm,
much, but push or force your love onto someone who is not ready to receive it, like you said,
mm,
actually controlling.
right.
And so, although we tend to see control as like from the masculine sense of like physically controlling someone or blocking them, we can also control through emotion. And so both the masculine and the feminine are learning how to release the control of the other.
Mm, amazing, amazing. So I feel like, definitely in recent times, most of our modeling of relationships has been codependency, and based on compromise. And to me, codependency is um there's aspects of myself that I don't like, and if you ignore those aspects for me, I'll ignore the aspects of you that you don't like for me, and so they're both parties are like holding themselves away from expressing their full potential, because there's like an agreement between them that there's just areas where you don't go, right? And so a big part of this is stepping into sovereignty. Can you speak on that?
Yeah, so that's a big part of that releasing of the control, right? Because that codependent dynamic is really rooted in this belief that you can have ownership or control another person.
Right.
And so once you release that belief, then you step into your sovereignty. And that can be really hard because we want, well, let's just say this. We go back to how I was explaining that we experience things and then the external is feedback for what's happening inside of us. We
Mm,
tend to want to assign what's happening outside of us, like as that's the ultimate truth. That's where it's all occurring, when it's actually occurring on the inside. So then what happens is we assign people's behaviors or reactions to us, um with like they're then the role of like the bad guy, or they're the one that's causing all of the
right.
problems, instead of going in and taking ownership and responsibility for self and seeing why we called that person in. What are we trying to learn from that person? Because codependency isn't always negative. Sometimes we get into these relationships because there is an aspect that that person carries that we're
Mm,
supposed to be learning how to embody ourselves. And so that's another way of bringing back the power and the sovereignty. It's honoring, okay, this person has mastered this certain aspect of self that I would like to have.
mm,
And so instead of relying on them to be that for us, which puts a lot of pressure on another person, we then can use them more as like this inspiration. And so then we don't have to use them anymore, and
right.
we become complete and whole within ourselves.
Right, beautiful. Mhm. Um, so I'm really excited actually because I feel like getting goosebumps already. I feel like you know, as you've been saying, we have to find the inner union first, right? We have to find that inner union between the divine feminine and the divine masculine, and then we meet the external reflection of that in romantic relationships, but also within our friendships. And we're just creating a whole new paradigm. And to me, that is the foundation of New Earth, is that the and I think I was speaking with Laura Fay about this in her last interview as well, but is, we can use the word leadership, but really we need a different kind of word, right? Because leadership implies a kind of hierarchy, and this will be a different
Mhm.
leadership. But our communities then will be founded on this space of unconditional love. That's very exciting, right?
Yes, it's so beautiful to think that we can get to this space where the heart is such a big part of the systems and the structures, instead of just having these very cold systems and then having the heart on the outside that we then kind of access on the side, or we sneak around to connect to.
Right,
And it will shift everything when we bring the soul and the heart back into everything that we do.
right. Do you see that happening? Do you see that something that's happening now? Do you see it happening in the next few years? Like, how do you perceive that wave happening in the world?
I do believe that, we've got many years to go. I feel that we're just starting.
Right.
And so a lot of people right now that are connected to these concepts and ideas are the way showers. And again, it's kind of like that leadership, but it's not leadership by force, it's leadership by example. Like, I'll go first and I will show you all of my wounds. I will make mistakes. I will fall flat on my face in front of you and try to figure it out and make this space for you to feel safe to do the same.
Mm,
So it's from this distorted masculine of like, I figured it all out and I have all of the answers. It's more of, I haven't figured it all out, but I have this undying urge within myself to um, be one of the first. And so I'm not afraid to go out there and look silly or crazy and make mistakes and put all my wounds out for other people to see. It's more of like this conviction to just keep going and evolving and not get
right,
stuck in the loop.
right. And also, I feel like because it's a different kind of leadership, it almost doesn't need to be seen because it's happening within the collective. So when there is couples within the collective and families within the collective and communities as that grows, that are based on those principles, just that power of the love. It's people in the next door house don't even need to know what's happening, but they just the love will somehow will reach them, right? Because of the power of that. Like when you feel it in yourself and then you feel it with your partner and then you imagine that spreading out through a whole community, that's so beautiful.
I completely agree. It's this ripple effect, and it doesn't have to be. You don't have to be on the world stage to demonstrate that, and it's people can feel it, and so as each of us heals and brings our own masculine and feminine energy into balance, it sends out that frequency to others, and then they can download that template, so to speak, themselves.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Laura, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful I found your work. I'm so grateful you're here at this time spreading your message. Is there anything else that you wanted to get into that we didn't cover?
I think that we covered a lot of it. I do think, a lot of what we're going to be seeing in the next 5 to 10 years is a lot. I feel, a lot of this masculine energy coming on board, where we're going to have to set boundaries and assert ourselves and really, again, take ownership for our own stuff, not get into a victim mindset, but then also not allow ourselves to um, allow other people to pull us back into the old templates and the old paradigms. And so I think that that's one thing that I just wanted to bring up, because there's so much of this feminine energy exploration that's happened in the spiritual communities, but we haven't really yet seen the divine masculine explored extensively. And I think that that's what's going to be coming
Right,
again in the years to come.
right, right. That is something I share a lot as well currently, is the need for compassionate boundaries, because in the past, a boundary was like shutting your heart down to someone, right? And now we've learned how to live more within the heart space. It's how do you keep your heart open, but also put a boundary, because, as you're saying, I think there's going to be a lot of more chaos and insanity happening in the world over the next few years. So how we protect that open heart space is really important, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely, that's the divine masculine energy, is being able to hold space for the feminine, the heart open, feminine energy, and find a way to set boundaries compassionately without force, without manipulation or punishment or any of that. And it's not easy. And I think that's why we haven't really seen it yet,
Right.
because you either go into distorted masculine energy and just shut people completely out, or you just cave in and do what they say because you're afraid of what's going to happen to you or speaking your truth. And so that middle space we haven't really explored yet, and I feel that that's the next step for the collective.
Amazing. Amazing. And anything else you wanted to share?
I think i think that's it. I think
Beautiful.
we covered so much. Yes.
So how can people reach you? How can they find you?
I'm most active on the Instagram. My Instagram handle is at Laura the Woken Mind, and there you can, click on the top of my bio, and there's a link to any workshops that I have currently, and then also you can book individual sessions with me as well.
So you do workshops online?
Yes, yes. I haven't done one since last year, um, but I may be doing one in the future. The last one was on grounding the divine masculine energy from within. So it is so much of like that, exploring that, and that one was for feminines. It's exploring that ability to set boundaries with others through relationships, through work experiences, family karma or drama or things like that, and trauma that's coming up. It's all about really those compassionate boundaries, setting those. So honoring your feminine and then bringing in your masculine as well. And that's how we birth and embody the divine masculine within ourselves. And then that then sends out that ripple effect. And it really actually helps a lot of core masculines, because they can feel that. It's very much like the feminine is birthing the divine masculine.
Oh, can you explain that?
Yeah, one way I live it out in a very literal sense is I have boys. And a lot of my friends too that I spend time with have boys as well. And
I
we've
have
raised
three. I
them.
have three sons.
Do you also? Oh wow, yes. So many of us that are working towards embodying the divine feminine are raising sons. And so we are demons. I'm getting chills from that. We are that you have three sons. We are demonstrating what it looks like to embody that divine masculine through the way that we're raising our children, and giving them that ability to demonstrate their masculinity but still have that feminine access to that feminine side as well. And I believe that that's how we're birthing the divine masculine, like literally, like some of us literally birth the divine masculine, but you don't have to be a mother to be able to do that, right? You can also birth that archetype within yourself, and then also then, set boundaries with anyone that's coming in that's not aligning with that type of energy. And so for us as a mother, it could be like if we see our son step into the distorted masculine template, we gently redirect, we set an example, and we also hold space for the masculinity without, trying to emasculate them like the distorted mother would do, right? We hold space and say, yes, I see that masculine energy, and it is different than the feminine energy, and it can still be represented in a very masculine, active, speaking your truth, not hiding sort of way, but also be connected to the heart. And so a lot of women are doing that when they have like relationships that come in where there's maybe distorted masculine energy there, and then they choose to walk away from that person or speak their truth with that person, and then that person can choose to change or grow. And so I feel that's how we're recoding that template through our interactions with each other, whether it be with our own children or with romantic partnerships or just friendships.
Right, right. I For I would say about 7 years, I've only attracted women to my work, and I never advertised myself as just for women. I mean, occasionally I'm doing a women's circle, but for some reason it's all women. How do you experience it? Do you experience a lot of men that are interested in exploring these concepts with you?
It's mostly women that come to me to work one on one. I have a lot of men that follow my work, and they may not contact me as often to go deeper, but that doesn't mean that they're not doing it, because it definitely looks different with men and women, the way that we do the internal work. And I kind of say that the masculine likes to really kind of go into the cave and do that healing work behind the scenes, where the feminine is more open to being in a group setting and sharing. And so we don't always see the masculine doing the work, because the masculine doesn't always, tend to go into a group setting to do that. And it can be really challenging to go into that dark space alone. And that's why we have to hold so much space for our men right now, because, mental health and the risk of suicide and all of that is really high with the masculine, because the masculine tends to go within and hermit. And I know that I can do that as well with my masculine energy, especially being someone who puts out a lot of stuff to the collective. I have to go into my masculine energy for that. So when I need to ask for help, um, it almost feels like, oh, I can't do that, because I've put myself out there, right, as someone who's helping others, and so I can't ask for help. So that's very much masculine energy of like the endurer and the one that doesn't ever show any of the wounds. But I am seeing now that there are more men that are willing to open up and ask for help. It's still scary. It still feels a little bit foreign, but I do see that there are men that are kind of like coming out of the shell more now.
Right. And do you work with same-sex couples? Like, how would you relate that work to someone who's not heterosexual?
Yeah, I work with people that are in all different types of relationships. So it's not even just monogamy either. And so really, again, I always focus on that internal relationship. So it doesn't really matter, who it is. It could
Right,
be a man or a woman, it can be multiple partners. It's always a reflection of what's going on inside. And so because I look at that inner relationship of the masculine and feminine, I then look at what's happening in a person's external relationship as just, again, the reflection of that, to kind of just confirm, okay, yes, look, do you see how it's being shown in your external world? And so that allows, releasing this attachment to that the masculine has to show up as a man, or the feminine has to show up as a woman, because
right.
is in our relationships too, we'll find that with women, right? We can have a women's circle, but have masculine and feminine energies in there at the same time. And so we can even come together. And I've, held space as the masculine for people in my life. Men in my life, I've been the masculine at times. So it really doesn't matter, what the love looks like or what the relationship looks like.
Right,
It's again, it's what's going on inside.
right. And as long as it's coming from that integrated place, that divine place is going to be healthy. It's only when you get into distortion templates that it stops being healthy. So in a way, it doesn't matter who's embodying the divine feminine and who's embodying the divine masculine, as long as it's those energies, we're good.
Absolutely, because it's we're all coming into union within ourselves, and what we've created, this template of man and woman coming together into a marriage and then birthing children and creating a family. That's all just an example of what's going on with our masculine and feminine energies. And so it's really as above, so below. And so we've created these systems and structures to represent the union of the masculine and feminine. And we're giving each other a little bit more space and freedom to demonstrate that in different ways, instead of just the traditional way.
Yeah, I actually feel that's a big part of the twin flame activation, is that as we have more couples who are visible in the world where it is based on that pure love, that unconditional love, it actually creates freedom and space, because the patriarchy is a model, right, of like you're saying, the man has to own the woman. Maybe the woman's trying to own the man emotionally, but it's all based on a manipulation template. And actually, as we deconstruct that, it creates a lot more space for all kinds of different relationships, rather than you have to have this heterosexual norm that everyone has to fit into. Twin flame, because it's pure love, it's unconditional love, it creates space for acceptance of all different kind of relationships. And being, I feel like it creates acceptance for being single long term as well, for men and women, because it's like, well, if you don't want to have that love, why would you settle for anything else? So for a lot of women, they've found like there's a taboo maybe around, not being in a relationship. And I feel like it gives permission to, for everyone to be on their journey wherever they are, and not to feel like, okay, we all have to be this thing, or there's something wrong with us.
Right, right. And also seeing the romantic relationship as the ultimate
Right,
has really set us up for codependency,
right.
because so many people are like, okay, well, I have to have that romantic partner to have real experience true love. And you can have true love with your friends, right? And so that's a big part of the healing that I'm seeing with the masculine collective in general. And in some ways, the masculine is more codependent than the feminine, because the masculine believes, okay, so if I'm going to open up, I'm going to have this one partner who I make my girlfriend or wife. And that's the only person I can talk to and trust and open up to. And so then that really sets the masculine collective up for mental health issues, or really, going so deep in and not actually asking for help, because they then think that that one partner is supposed to only be the only person that can do that for them. And so we're really trying to get away from that and get to this place where we can all see each other as each other's mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, children, and get back to this place of oneness.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. So you're telling us you've got the website and you offer workshops and coaching, and the Instagram. Is there anywhere else where you put stuff out? Are you on TikTok or anything?
I just started Twitter a while back. So it's still kind of small. I have a Facebook too, Laura the Woken Mind, on there. That's starting to get a little bit more active, where people are commenting there, and it's a little bit of a smaller community, so it's nice if the Instagram is too much. And yeah, and then all on each of those there's the link to my link tree, and then you can see all the different offerings that I have at the time.
Are you working on a book? Do you feel like there's a book on the way?
Yeah, it's interesting that you asked. I've been asked that question for a long time. My direct messages are always full with people asking like, when is the book coming? And so I believe it is coming. I can't put a date on it. And I definitely operate very feminine, so very spontaneous and intuitively. Again, with some structure in there with my masculine energy, but I do believe a book will be coming out in the near future.
Amazing. Laura, thank you so much for everything you're sharing.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been such a beautiful conversation, and I really appreciate you and the work that you do and for having me here to have this beautiful discussion today.
Thank you.